Hey guys, welcome to lesson 122, day 4 quiz review. So this is meant as a quiz review, so a lot of these questions are going to look very similar to ones that you have done before. The idea here is just to get a general sense or an idea of what's going to be on the quiz tomorrow, and go through some problems that you might not have seen in a little bit. So, of course, if you have questions, hop over to the Zoom chat. I'll be happy to help you out. Also, feel free to fast forward. Like if you don't feel like you need a review on a particular question, fast forward through that one and go to the next one. If you feel like you're ready, go right to the review assignment that I made for today for the daily practice and try the problems out. All right. If you get stuck, come back to the video or come back to the Zoom chat. All right, so yesterday we reviewed equation solving from Algebra 1, and we left off with an equation that looked like this where we needed to solve for y. Okay, so let me grab my pen here and we'll get started on this one. Okay, so solving for anything just means finding the value of a variable that makes the statement true. But unfortunately in this one we have two different variables. All right, so in this case when we solve, our goal is going to be to get the y variable by itself because it wants to solve for y, but we're not going to get a number. Instead, we're going to get an expression at the end. All right, so watch what I do here. My goal is to get y by itself. So I'm going to move everything else over to the right-hand side, and I'm going to start with this 3x. So since it's a positive 3x, I'm going to subtract 3x, and whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. And this is where students tend to get confused. Now notice this 16, it does not have an x, so I can't subtract those two. All right, so I'm writing my negative 3x over here. And watch what I do. They're going to cancel on this side. All that's left is a 2y. And then on the right side, I'm simply going to write 16 minus 3x. I can't combine those. They're not like terms. This one has an x, this one doesn't. So this is the best I can do. Just write it out, 16 minus 3x. All right, next step here, to get rid of the 2, I need to divide since it's multiplication. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. And that means the entire side. So both of these things need to be divided by 2. Right? So 2's cancel. And now we say y equals, which was our goal, right, to get y by itself. And then I just got to go over here and divide both of these things by 2. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. And negative 3 divided by 2 is negative 1.5x. And I can leave my answer like that, or you could leave it as a fraction. Either way, it should work. So I'm going to say y equals 8 minus 3 over 2x. So I can just leave it like that too. All right, so either one of these are good. And that's it, then we're done. Y is by itself, so the equation is technically solved for y. Even though we don't have a number, if we wanted to know that number, we would have to know what x is, and we don't. So that's where the problem ends. All right, domain and range, right? We've talked a lot about domain and range over the last 2 weeks. You do not have to worry about doing domain and range for those rational functions that we've been talking about this week. So we're just going to do domain and range with simple things like graphs like this, parabolas, continuous graphs that don't have any asymptotes in them. All right, so don't worry about the rational stuff this week. All right. So domain and range, right? Remember, domain describes all of the x values, so really what we want to know is how far to the left does the graph go and how far to the right does the graph go. Okay, so if I hop on my graph here and I head off to the left, I'm going and I notice that I stop right here. All right, so this is where it stops going off to the left, and I go up to the x-axis since I'm trying to describe x, and I notice that I stop at negative 2. So my left bound is negative 2. I'm going to hop back on my function because I need to figure out how far to the right I have to go. So I'm following my function off to the right, and I notice there's an arrow on the end here indicating that it's going to go off to the right forever. Even though I can't see it on my graph, the graph gets cut off right here, but the arrow tells me it goes on forever. So this goes from negative 2 to positive infinity. And then remember how the brackets work. If you can get to the number, you put a square bracket on it. If you can't get to the number, then you put a curved parentheses on it. So I'm going to go over here to my negative 2. It's a closed dot, so I can actually get to that number. So it gets a square bracket. And infinity, obviously you'll never get to infinity, so we're going to put a curved bracket on that one. Okay. Your questions on the quiz tomorrow, they're all going to be interval notation, so you don't have to worry about the inequality notation that I taught you before. Okay, so make sure you can do interval. Now, range, right? Range is up and down, right? So how low does it go? How high does it go? And we're going to start with low, so I'm going to hop on my function and I'm going to go down, right? And we stop here. This is our lowest point, so it stops going down here. And since I'm describing y's, I'm going to go over to the y-axis and see where I stopped, and I stopped at -2. So there's my lower bound. I'm going to hop back on my function and I'm going to go as high as I can. So I'm going up on my function here, and I realize there's an arrow and it's going to keep going up forever and ever. So I know I'm going to go off to positive infinity. Okay? And just like with the domain, you can get to the -2, but you can't get to the positive infinity. All right, so that's a review of domain and range. All right, now with this one, we've seen this question on the first two quizzes. So this is where I give you a function, and you have to graph it on the graph over here and then tell me everything about that function. All right, so to demonstrate this problem, I'm going to pull it up in MyOpenMath so I can show you how the graphing tool works in MyOpenMath. Okay, so you'll notice they give you the function up here. So you've got -x-1, x-3. And I'm going to pull up my calculator, because the best way to do this is with your calculator. It'll give you all the information that you need. Okay. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to clear out anything that I have in y1, and I'm going to enter my function in. Okay. So this is a negative symbol, so I need to make sure that I use the negative key down here. And then I'm going to go x-1 in a set of parentheses, and x-3 in a second set of parentheses. All right, so I typed it in just like they gave it to me in MyOpenMath. And I'm going to go ahead and hit graph and see what it draws for me. Okay. So I notice the shape here is a parabola. All right, and you'll notice over here at the bottom of the MyOpenMath problem, there's several different shapes that you can choose from. So based on what I'm seeing on the calculator, we're going to be choosing the parabola shape. Okay. All right, so now the next thing I need to know, if I want to graph the parabola, I need to know the vertex first. So I need this point, and you can kind of eyeball it. So we're going to go 1, 2, up 1. So it looks like the vertex is at 2, 1, but I'm going to verify that in my table. So I'm going to hit second, graph, and I'm going to go and look for that point. There's 2, 1, and I want to make sure that it's a vertex, so it should be the highest point on the graph. So you'll notice that we're going up, and you go -3, 0, 1, right? So it goes up to 1, and then it starts going back down. So it goes back down to 0, then -3, then -8. So that's how I know I'm looking at a parabola, because that parabola is either going to be a minimum or a maximum. And since our parabola opens downward, it's a maximum. So that is the highest point that I see for the y values. So I know that my parabola is going to be at 2, 1. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on 2, 1 first. So when you use this graphing tool, the first point that you click on has to be the vertex. And then you'll notice that as you go around here and you move that second point around, it starts to shape your parabola. So the next point that you plot can be any other point that was in that table. So I'm going to go back to my calculator here, and I notice the very next point was at 3, 0. So when I come over here, I'm going to click on 3, 0, which is right here, and it'll automatically shape my parabola for me. Okay, so now I know that's graphed correctly. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to describe all the important points, right? So the vertex is the first point that we plotted. That was at 2, 1. So when I type this in, I need a parentheses, 2, 1, parentheses. All right, so a lot of you guys were forgetting the parentheses when you were writing down that vertex. All right, y-intercept located right here. All right, so that's at 0, -3. So I'm going to go parentheses 0, -3, and there we go. X-intercepts, I see 2 x-intercepts here and here, so I've got one at 1, 0. There we are. And then since I have a second one, I'm going to put a comma in between, and I'm going to start a second x-intercept, which is here at 3, 0. There we go. Okay, domain. All right, so remember for parabolas, the domain is always -infinity to positive infinity. So if I go off to the left here, I know this parabola keeps going on and on forever. So it's going to go to -infinity. So I'm going to hit infinity, comma, and then I know that it's going to go off to the right forever too. So if I head off to the right, it keeps going forever and ever. So I'm going to put a positive infinity there, and both of those are going to get parentheses instead of brackets because it's infinity. Okay. All right, range, right, low to high. So remember, this parabola is going to go down forever and ever. So I need a negative infinity here. And then I'm going to put a comma, and I need to figure out how high it goes. So I'm going to go back up to my graph, and I go up, 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 and it looks like it stops going up right here. So that's as high as it goes, and I'm looking at the y value that I got up to. So that's a 1. So I type in a 1, and I'm going to put my parentheses on the negative infinity, and then for the 1, we're going to need a square bracket because we can actually get to that 1. Okay. The equation for the axis of symmetry, remember, that is going to be the line that splits this parabola in half. It's the fold line, okay? And that happens at x equals 2. So make sure you actually type in an equation, right? So it has to be x equals 2. If you just type in a 2 here, it will mark it wrong. Okay? Then you would click submit, and it should tell you, hey, you got everything right. If you made, it won't tell you that on the quiz, but you'll find out when I grade it. All right, so that is that problem. Last one I'm going to demonstrate for you here is evaluating a function again. So this is one of the first things that we did at the beginning of the year, where I might give you an input or an output and ask you to go forwards or backwards through the function. So in this first one, they give us f of 2, and the 2 is an input. Okay, so I'm going to go to my function, and wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a 2. So I have negative 40 divided by 2 minus 10, right? So that x got replaced. And then I'm going to go through and make sure I do everything in the correct order. So the negative 40 is going to stay for right now. I'm going to do 2 minus 10, which is negative 8. And then I'm going to do negative 40 divided by negative 8. And I'll do that in the calculator with you just in case you're using the calculator. I want you to see how it goes in, right? So remember, use the negative key here. So this will be negative 40 divided by negative 8, just like that. You get a positive 5. There you go. So when I put a 2 in, I get a 5 out. All right, now this one down here looks a little bit different. You'll notice that the number that they gave us is not an input. It's not the value that's inside of the parentheses. This is an output. Okay. So this is what we want to get out. So I'm going to say negative 40 over x minus 10 has to equal 5. Right? I want to get the 5 out. I don't know what x is. This is what I have to solve for. All right. So this actually becomes one of those equations that we talked about yesterday. What I'm going to do to solve this, I'll show you a little trick here, is I'm going to divide this by 1, right? Because 5 divided by 1 is still 5. So I didn't change anything, I just changed the way it looked. Okay. I'm going to put this x minus 10 in a set of parentheses, and then I'm going to use cross multiplication to get rid of these fractions. Okay. So when I do 5 times x minus 10, I get this. I get 5 parentheses x minus 10, and then I got negative 40 times 1, so I just get negative 40. So now this is my new equation after I use cross multiplication. And I'm going to draw my dividing line, and I'm going to start solving. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute. So 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 10 is negative 50. And then I still have a negative 40 over here. Now I'm going to move the negative 50 over, so I've got to add it to both sides. So those cancel. And we'll have nothing but a 5x over here. And then negative 40 plus 50. Again, I'll show you that in the calculator, just in case you're messing up the calculator here. So we got negative 40, not minus 40, negative 40 plus 50. Just like that. And you'll see we get a 10. And then we're going to divide both sides by 5. Right? And that's because these were being multiplied. So the 5 cancels. We get x equals 10 divided by 5 is 2. And there's our answer. Alright guys, I know that was a long video today, but again, fast forward through anything, or I hope you fast forwarded through anything you didn't really need to see. So that was kind of the intention. It was a review, and you can pause, fast forward, watch over and over again, whatever you think you needed to see to get ready for that quiz tomorrow. But if you work through these problems with me and you did the practice problems that I assigned today, you should do pretty good on the quiz tomorrow. If you have any other questions, make sure you hop over to the Zoom chat and ask, and I would love to clarify things for you. All right, guys, have a great day.